What is going on, guys? It is Seth with Wired Customs, and today we're going to do kind of a different video. So, lately on some of the forums that I'm a part of, I've heard a lot of talk about a YouTube channel called The Verge. This channel is a tech channel. They review new phones, new laptops, things like that. It looks like they get things before most people, so they can kind of do one of those initial reviews like a lot of our favorite tech tubers do. But they're mostly just phones and laptops, things of that nature. So you'd think they'd be pretty technologically inclined. This video I'm about to show you is not what you would expect at all. So, The Verge, this YouTube company, this channel, they decided to build a decent editing rig, decent in their terms, and it's very apparent this guy doesn't exactly know what he's doing. So, this is kind of just a demonstration of someone like your average person trying to dive into just building a computer as opposed to letting somebody professional handle it, such as myself or Jim here at Wired Customs, because that's what we do. We build computers for people. We do repairs, things of that nature, and this is just what we do. So naturally, we're good at it. Whereas you, the consumer, would have to do hours of research, figure out what parts are compatible with what, figure out how to get it to boot, and then cable management, all the other stuff. It can be a lot to deal with at once just going into it. So without further ado, I'm going to pull up the video, and we're going to watch it together. I'm going to pause it intermittently and discuss what he's doing wrong, and I'm pretty much just going to pick this channel apart, or the video rather. I'm going to pick this video apart so then you can kind of see the difference between somebody who has very minimal experience, who doesn't really know what they're doing, versus somebody who does this way too much. So I'm not trying to sound cocky, I'm not trying to sound conceited, but I'm confident in what I do. So we're going to see the difference between a professional and essentially an amateur. So switch to the live feed. Okay, so here we go. This is the start of the video. You can see he has a ROG Z370 motherboard, some Corsair power supply. So far I don't see any really low end parts. On the right here, he has it's a new 280X case from Corsair. It might be nice to look at. The airflow is terrible. So that is my first critique, is that he picked a garbage case to build in. The thermals in that case are really bad. So, strike one. Alright, here we go.
So a few years ago, TC, or managing editor, built a gaming desktop, but it's kind of out of date, and it's definitely not going to hold up for Battlefield 5. So let's build a new one. You can...
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there, immediately. Built a gaming desktop that's not going to hold up for Battlefield 5. Any of you people who play Battlefield know that as long as you have a dedicated GPU, pretty much bare minimum, like even a 1050, will run Battlefield. So that's having to rebuild the computer entirely for Battlefield. Stupid. Okay, pressing on.
Build a gaming desktop for around $1,000, but I want to go all out, so I spent around $2,000. PC like this is going to be
Alright, man, I'm going to stop you again. He's going all out, right? $2,000. All out. I have close to 5 in mine, and it still won't do 4K 60 that well, and I have a 1080 Ti. So $2,000 is a decent mid-range, I guess, prosumer desktop. Can probably handle most things you throw at it, but it's miles from all out. I've given quotes to people for $20,000 because they want 3-way SLI Titans, 7980 XEs, etc., all on water. $2,000 is barely dipping your toes in the pool, bud. So, all right, moving on.
able to play most games at ultra settings. So, what do you need to build a desktop? Well, of course, first you need a table. Preferably not metal. If it's going to be metal, have an anti-static working surface layered on top of it, a thermal paste applicator, an Allen wrench, some tweezers to tighten up the wires, a Swiss Army knife which hopefully has a Phillips head screwdriver in it, and last but not least, an anti-static bracelet which is to...
Okay. Swiss Army knife. No, you don't need that. Get a pair of needle nose pliers and probably just a Phillips head and you're good to go. That's really all you need. He called zip ties tweezers. Very different. And a thermal paste applicator? Are you serious? You apply the thermal paste on the CPU, and then when you tighten down the AIO or the heatsink, whatever you're using, the air cooler, that's what spreads it out. That's what makes sure the contact is even. If you spread it, you could get thin spots on the CPU lid that don't make good contact because you spread it out. You made it too thin. So when you have a blob of thermal paste on there and you smush it together, that's what causes it to spread out and make good contact. Don't ever use a thermal paste spreader. Just big blob in the middle. That's it.
protect you and the parts. These are the parts you're going to need, but more...
Okay, anti-static. No, stupid. I've seen people build systems on carpets. The risk of electrostatic damage to components, very, very minimal. I've never seen anything like that happen ever. I don't use anti-static anything. I just build on a wood table. It's overkill. It's come on, man. All right.
More importantly, before we get there, we need to understand what these parts are doing.
We're not even a minute in yet.
To better understand the parts that make up a desktop, let's try to understand them individually.
Oh yeah, let's try to understand them.
Brain, a base of calculations that control everything the computer does. The motherboard is like the foundation, serving as a main structure for all other parts to be added to. It also allows the other parts to communicate with one another, which also makes it kind of like a nervous system. Graphics cards are responsible for rendering and processing visuals into what you see on screen. Our PC's power supply is of course channeling electricity, in that it adjusts and provides the right amount of energy to keep it running. Last but not least, RAM, or random access memory, and your hard drive are good examples of short-term and long-term memory.
Nailing these definitions so
If
far.
you want to better understand what kind
Good
of
job.
computer to build,
You can
then
read.
first figure out what you want to use it for.
Oh no.
A gamer might care more
Here we
about a
go.
graphics card than, say, a video editor who might want extra RAM to assist with editing large files.
GPUs can be assisted in rendering. He already said that. So even for video production, GPUs are important. Moving on.
If you're building a budget build for video streaming, say under $1,000, you want to focus on parts, like a Core i5 or Core i3 processor, that require less energy. They'll be less powerful, but then you'll be able to scale back the cost of several other parts. And if you need help choosing the right parts for your build, there are sites like PCPartPicker.com that help show presets for which parts fit together, which sort of part conflicts you might have, and where to find deals.
Okay. PC Part Picker can be helpful. Sometimes will list compatibility errors when there are none, and sometimes will not list compatibility errors when there should be. The only thing you can trust is your brain. Know what goes with what, do the proper reading. If you don't want to become super familiar with computers and do hours of research, that's where I come in. So, can't trust these websites completely.
On new parts.
We have a lot of boxes and a lot of PC parts, so it's best you unbox them, isolate the parts that you really need, place items into the case, and make sure that they all fit, and then start working. And now we're really going to start...
You're going to make sure your components fit? How? You just ordered these not knowing if they would work in your case? What?
building by adding the motherboard in. Some notes about installing motherboards: they're really delicate, you should be really careful with them, and screw in with confidence, but also don't screw in too hard, otherwise you could crack the board. I chose Asus's Z370 motherboard.
Don't screw in too hard, or you will crack the board. The threads will bottom out inside the standoff before you can put enough pressure on the board to do any damage. This is part of the elitist mindset of you have to do this just right or you'll break your whole computer and you'll be out thousands of dollars. Jay's 2 cents did a video on how easy is it to build a computer wrong or whatever it was, where he was just super rough with the parts. He just threw stuff around. He built the computer using every tip or everything that people said not to do, and the computer booted just fine. It looked like crap, but it worked. So this is part of his elitist mindset of, oh, you have to be doing this just right or you're gonna break it. It doesn't work like that.
For two main reasons. One, it has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and also it has support for NVMe SSDs, meaning you can get really fast SSDs that are really easy to install. Pay close attention to the brace that goes at the back of the computer. You always have to make sure that you really hammer it in.
Brace? We're talking about the rear panel with the I/O ports?
Because there's no screw, it really just has to go outside of the case and clasp onto the frame. And this is very important because otherwise...
Doesn't clasp onto the frame. There's standoffs pre-installed into the chassis. There's one in the middle that has a little part that sticks up that your motherboard will slide onto and fit on. And that is a guide to help you line up all the other holes onto the other standoffs. It doesn't clasp onto anything. It just sits in a little stud. That's it.
You can't align the motherboard correctly with the holes. We're just going to start installing all 8 screws. So next we're going to install the RAM on the motherboard.
Don't screw in too hard, you'll break it.
16GB Vengeance LED RAM for two main reasons. One, it has LEDs and we do like lights in our gaming desktops. Secondly, it's pretty fast RAM. It's 2666 so it's pretty
super fast RAM, guys. 2666. Lightning fast. Get the hell out of here, man. DDR4 standard is 2133. That is the absolute base, lowest speed DDR4 runs at. 2666 is just a smidge above that. We have 5,000 megahertz of RAM available to us. Is it worth the money? No, probably not. I mean, 4166 is even somewhat affordable. Best bang for your buck is usually between 3,200 and 3,600. 2666, if you put that in a Ryzen system, your benchmarks would be suffering horribly because of the Infinity Fabric and how that works with the Ryzen system. The core communications would be way slower because it's based on RAM. I digress. 2666. It makes me sad when people use under 3,000. So, dude.
pretty fast, and this motherboard supports that speed, which is most important. Open the slots first.
It probably supports 4K plus.
With the middle of the strip, not with the end, and just lining that up with the logo. So once you hear that solid clasp and you don't see the gold connectors on the side anymore, that's when you know the RAM is in.
When your RAM is installed properly, you will hear two distinct clicks. One side latching and then the other side latching.
Step 3, we're going to install the hard drive, or in this case, the NVMe SSD. I chose this format of solid-state drive so that I could input it into the motherboard without having to worry about
I wonder if that's even
wires
NVMe.
or
It's probably SATA.
The case and just getting really messy. This is from Kingston, and it's 480 gigabytes, so it's not a lot, but you can always upgrade this and swap it out, and it's only held down by one screw and the latch, so it's really simple and really straightforward. Speed for gaming is important when it comes to a hard drive. You want files to write quickly, and you want games to load quickly, so that's why...
Okay, that looks super sloped. So it looks like he didn't install the standoff to mount the NVMe drive correctly, if it is truly NVMe. M.2 is a form factor. That's just the style of the hard drive. NVMe is a certain speed, and so is SATA. They can both come as M.2, those long rectangles. But you can tell by the way it's sloped, it looks like he didn't install the standoff on the other end, because that should be straight across. There's a little standoff that installs on the other end, so it sits down on there, and then you screw it in like that. Looks like he didn't do that.
Well, it's best if you use an SSD. Okay, so step 4, we're going to install the graphics card. I chose...
What is that?
Those PNY's GTX 1080, which is overclocked.
Okay.
And so it's a pretty easy installation. You're just going to find the gold connectors, and you're going to line this bracket with the back end bracket of your PC case. Now, which lane you choose depends entirely on what other parts you're going to put in the system.
Oh my
I'm just going
god.
to pick the top one because the
Different slots on your motherboard, the different PCI slots run at different speeds. Usually they're X8 and X16. If you have a high-end card and you put it on an X8 slot, it could bottleneck. Always go for the X16. It's best practice, just use the top slot so it has the most room to breathe under it. It does matter. It does matter. And what the hell would even be in the way of the GPU? Man, this guy's getting on my... This was funny and now it's kind of agitating.
SSD is at the bottom, and I don't want to cover it. I just think it looks nice. Click down.
At least he picked the right slot,
Take
even
your
by
remaining
chance.
brackets and just put them in the spots that you haven't used.
Why would you even take them
You
out?
don't have to screw these in. They get bolted down by the back end bracket, and your GPU is installed.
Okay, I don't know about that case, but most cases it would have to be screwed in.
Power supply because I need enough headroom for ray tracing GPUs when they come out, and I don't want to have to upgrade it again.
Okay. I don't know if you heard him. I was talking. He said he got a Corsair 850 watt power supply to make sure he had headroom for ray tracing GPUs. How high do you think the TDP on these cards are, man? I currently, well, I mean, not right now because I just recently upgraded my power supply, but at one point I had my 1800X running daily 1.38 volts, and my 1080 Ti, which is a dual 8-pin. I had that overclocked too. Gamed on that, never had power issues. I bet you I wasn't even pulling 500 watts. A lot of the time, people way overestimate power usage, and it just makes you look dumb because you're spending money on stuff you don't need. Like this guy, 850 watts? Dude, you don't need that.
So all you have to do is take the brick and make sure that you align it with these little insulating pads so the power supply doesn't short circuit and come into contact with the rest of the system.
What?
So just take it in.
You don't think that the housing of the power supply isn't grounded? What, you think that if you run that and you touch it, you'll get electrocuted? Is that what you think, dude? No, okay, so that's not a thing. Most cases don't have rubber pads or something. I think my PC11 Dynamic, my Leon case, I'm pretty sure it just has two metal squares that it sits on to line it up with the bracket in the back. No, you don't want to line it up with the rubber pedestal to keep it from shorting. That's there's holes on the back of your power supply that line up with holes on the case so you can bolt it into the case. That is what you should be focusing on. If your power supply shorts out or does anything crazy, I guarantee you it's manufacturer defect. I've never seen that happen, and that should never ever happen. So you can rub your power supply metal on metal all day if you want.
Slide it in nice and easy until you have a snug fit, and then shift it to the back and make sure it's right.
Oh, check that out. Nice. Okay. Did you notice where his intake fan is on his power supply? It's facing the inside of the case. So it's either going to get pretty much no airflow or it's going to get hot airflow. There should be a ventilation port for your PSU no matter what case you're using. If it mounts on its side like that, then there should be some kind of ventilation coming from the outside so we can pull in cold air to cool all the hot components and then exhaust it out of the rear of the power supply. Always have the fan out, dude. Always have the fan out. Always.
Frame. Now you just take the required screws and you tighten and screw in. So next
got
step,
that part
we're going
right.
to install the CPU core. In this case, it's going to go on the top end of the case, and we're just going to have the hose hang out for a little while until we install the processor, which is going to come a little later. Always be sure to try to place it in the system first before you install it, because you can see it takes up a lot of space.
Why?
But in this case, no pun.
There's really no correct order to do that. I mean, I personally, you usually have it bolted, on top of the CPU first, and then I mount the rad. The order doesn't matter.
Unintended, it fits in perfectly, and we're gonna start.
Yeah, it does because it's designed for it.
About this screwing in process. They're
Standard
just really long
slots.
screws because they go through the entire frame of the cooler, and they take forever. So next up, cables. Every power supply is going to come with a big bag of Velcro cables. It's kind of daunting at first, so you always have to find the ones that are going to fit.
Big bag of
In this
Velcro
case, you need
cables?
to match those cables with the correct descriptions on the power supply.
Also, when you install the power supply, it would be in your best interest to have these cables already connected to your power supply if it's modular. Route them through there and put them through the corresponding holes, because if you're like this genius and you have to route those cables and plug them into the power supply when it's already in your case, you're going to be really upset with yourself because that is going to suck.
Next step is we're connecting the power supply to the motherboard with a 24-pin cable. We're just matching that cable from the motherboard, threading it through the back, and attaching the 24-pin header to the power supply.
Oh
so
God,
we can
please
have one
fix
of the
that.
connections complete. The next few additions will be for the
Dude.
CPU, for any specific ports that the case has, for any lighting that the case has, the CPU cooler, anything else really. We're installing the CPU, the heart of the computer. Or
Hold
the
on,
brain,
what was
depending on
that?
How you look at it, really. We're installing
3.7 gigahertz on it. I can't see. What model?
anything else really.
What
We're
model?
installing the CPU.
Ah, damn it.
Anything else really. We're installing the CPU,
Ah,
the heart of the computer or the brain, depending on how you look at
I
it.
don't see the model.
So to do this, we're just going to remove the plastic covering that they put on the motherboard. We're just going to take this little plastic part out. We'll just toss that out of here. And now we have an exposed CPU holder, or rather slot. on the
Holder
motherboard.
slot. Try
And we're going to
socket.
use the CPU applicator. This
Oh
is
my
a special
God,
little part
no.
that not everyone may get, but this motherboard that we got from ASUS definitely does.
That applicator is stupid. It is a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. Don't mess with the applicator. Look at your motherboard. Find the shiny triangle. Look at your CPU. Find the shiny triangle. Drop it in. Good to go. See how long this guy messes with the CPU.
Does have. It's called a CPU installation tool. It makes it really useful if you want to install a
No, it
Core
doesn't.
i7 hexa-core CPU.
Oh,
Yeah, we've
Oh.
got one, and it's an 8th generation chip, and it's ready to go, and it supports overclocking.
whoa.
So what having
8th gen hexa-core with overclocking? Bro, that's intense. So we either got the 8600K or the 8700K. Einstein over here probably doesn't know about delidding and the garbage Tim from Intel. So enjoy making this computer work and seeing 80 to 90C on the daily. Intel chips I don't think should be put into a computer that's going to see work without delidding, because the thermal interface material between the CPU lid and the CPU die itself is like used toilet paper. It doesn't conduct heat at all, so the package stays incredibly hot anytime you stress it. Ew.
this little installer does for you is it's basically a brace that you can apply right to the CPU and light it up with the triangles that you'll see on the bottom left corners.
It's
And
useless.
this will make it easier for us to apply it to the motherboard and then apply thermal paste and then apply a CPU cooler on top. And we're just going to carefully lean it down into the system and make sure that everything lines up, and we're going to clasp down on it and we'll be good to go. So we're about to apply thermal paste to the CPU. Every CPU
Oh, no.
cooler actually comes with a bit of thermal paste already neatly applied in a circle around it, but it's usually not enough. It's good, essentially PC building practice to have a little bit extra.
What do you
and
know
layer
about
it
that?
on top
Oh,
of the CPU.
Jesus, no.
The final portion is to add the CPU cooler
No, no,
to
no,
the
no.
top end of the processor. So you're going to see that there are 4 brackets.
Whoa, red flag. Throwing the red flag right now. Okay, let's talk about that. He pulled the cooler up, and he showed the paste that comes on the cooler. That should never be used. Super thin coat, not good stuff, cheap. Immediately get an alcohol wipe or some isopropyl and a paper towel and get rid of that. Get rid of it. Secondly, he was applying thermal paste to the CPU with the other stuff already on the cooler. So he's mixing two different kinds of thermal paste. Thirdly, he was dotting the CPU or the thermal paste around the die of the CPU. So the very, very, very center part of the CPU is where all the heat comes from, that little metal die in the middle of it. That is the part that gets hot. That's why you put the blob on the middle and let it spread out when you smush the cooler onto it. He was literally circling that, so the middle is going to get the least amount of coverage, and that is the most important part. So now you don't have to... Intel's horrible thermal paste on the inside of the CPU is not going to be your only problem now. Now you're going to make thermals worse by mixing two crappy thermal pastes and missing the freaking die completely. Oh my god, and look on the screen right now where I paused it. Unbelievable. He has 2 sticks of RAM and a 4-channel motherboard right next to each other. It specifically says in the motherboard manual to use dual channel. You have to space them one apart. Usually it's slot 1 and slot 3, which is from the right to the left. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4. For 2 sticks of RAM, usually you use channels 1 and 3 to get dual bandwidth. I don't even know if it's going to boot like that. I don't even know if it'll recognize all 16 gigs. It might only pick up 1, or it might throw a postcode and not even let him boot into his OS. Oh my god. Okay.
Or rather, like screws in here with brackets and holders right here.
Oh, there's so
And
much
we're going to
paste
keep
on there.
The cooler raised off the processor, but it's
So
also going to
much.
be close enough to actually physically come in contact with it. Like basically keep it cool. Take thumb screws. Like
Not
this,
gonna route those lines at all.
and just screw them on. So now that our internals are done, we're going to put all the panels back on, which is the top glass, side glass, front glass, and of
Did
course
no
the back
cable
panel
management.
where all of this fun stuff is happening.
Ooh.
So we fully built the PC, everything is put together, and we got to the full screen. So what's next? Well, you need a USB flash drive with your Windows installation media on it, and of course a license key. So I plugged
You don't
that
need a
up,
license key.
installed Windows in a couple of minutes,
But it helps.
installed a bunch of drivers, and now we have a fully functioning gaming PC ready to run some games. Right now I've got Arma 3 running at maximum settings, native resolution, which is 1080p HD. And it's running pretty smoothly. Like, of
course it is. It's 1080p when you have a 1080 GPU in there.
Intensive game to run, and it's still doing a pretty good job. So right now I'm playing League of Legends. It's one of my favorite
1080p,
games.
60
I'm actually
hertz.
playing
It takes
against a
nothing to run
bot,
that.
and I'm distracted, so I'm not actually doing so well. But otherwise, like, this is pretty much what you would see me do on a gaming computer. Test stuff out, and hopefully have really high frame rates like I am right now. I'm averaging 120 FPS, and that's only because I've actually locked the game to that frame rate, because I can get around 300 FPS playing League on maximum settings, which is a little bit absurd.
300 frames per second will cause insane screen tearing and will look like crap. 120 FPS on what I'm guessing is probably a basic 60 hertz monitor, just judging by this guy's track record so far with the train wreck that has happened. He's probably going to have tearing issues when he plays other games if he locks it at that high of a frame rate. Also, why would you build a gaming PC for Dota? Or League of Legends, I guess, same thing. It takes no resources to run. You could run that on your mom's laptop. I really hope you didn't spend the money for a 1080 just to play League of Legends.
And you don't really need that, so I locked it. Building a gaming desktop has been a great experience. I'm able to max
Not
out
for
a lot
me.
of my favorite titles, and I'll be able to play a lot of upcoming titles like Battlefield 5 and Cyberpunk 2077 without worrying too much about the parts I have. When ray tracing GPUs come out, for example, I'll be able to upgrade without having to buy a completely new system. And if I have a problem down the line, I can always just swap out a part and have it serviced rather than losing my whole computer. And of course now we also have a computer to test and benchmark games here at the Verge.
Capital One, you should feel real bad for sponsoring this tool.
Thanks for watching. Let me know if you've built a computer before yourself, or
No.
how you would spend $2,000 on your own build. I'm really interested in
No.
seeing what sort of parts
No,
you
we're
guys
done
would
here.
use.
We're done.
And don't forget
We're
to like
done.
this video
Goodbye.
and subscribe to the Verge.
Goodbye, silly man. So you would think the producer, whoever does the script, whoever looks over this video, would have looked at other PC builds, and you just think that this would have gone a lot better, but it didn't, and that's really disappointing. The fact that this guy has 2 million subscribers, and he put this hot garbage on his channel. Dude, you're not a PC builder. You're not experienced in this, so why would you post a video building a PC? That'd be like if somebody wasn't a car mechanic and they're like, I'm going to try and fix my car. Can you imagine how cringy that would be? That's exactly what we just witnessed. So, do yourself a favor. If you don't have the time to invest hours upon hours into researching computer components and compatibility and all of that, just please consult somebody who knows what they're doing. Here at Wired Customs, we don't charge a large premium for PC builds. We don't make our money from that, plain and simple. That's almost more of a marketing tool than it is for profit. Mostly what we do is we find components used. We will build a good PC out of deals we find, and we will benchmark it. We'll ensure the integrity of the computer. We'll warranty it, because they are used parts, and then we'll sell it at a low price so somebody gets good components at, a really, really good price, like way, 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 way less than the same computer that you would see at Best Buy or something like that. And it's warranted, so you don't have to worry about parts being used. If something doesn't act right, send it back to us. We'll handle it, whether it's fixing it or replacing it, we'll handle it. So, yeah, building custom computers for people isn't something we charge very much for. So if you are not an expert, don't pretend to be. If you have 2 million subscribers, don't try and do something that you don't know how to do in front of all 2 million subscribers. They disabled comments. They disabled up and down voting on this video because they received so much flaming for how bad of a job they did. The cable management was atrocious. This guy had no idea what he was doing. And you could see on his CPU cooler, there was one of the screws for the studs he didn't even install. So that cooler could have just not even been seated on there all the way. There's so many things I picked apart. Again, I don't want to come off like I'm just trying to throw shade at this guy. But there's a difference between being a PC builder and being a professional and pretending to know what you're doing and risk spending $2,000 for some hot trash. We know you work hard for your money. Spend it wisely. You can send us messages, questions, comments, concerns. Facebook.com/WiredCustomsCapel. Stay tuned for more videos. We do builds, product reviews, all kinds of stuff. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Like the video if you liked it. Dislike it if you didn't. Share it and subscribe. Thank you.